Hello, everybody. And today, again, I'm here, but with a very, very special guest. But that special guest, I think, will be starting. We will start the conversation entirely, but speaking about his journey and his path that he was going through and get to where he is today. And then we'll dive deep into the business case aspect and into the the quantitative mimics that he would like to mention because he's coming for a very big crop rate, which I we cannot disclose here, live, in the like in the live recording session, and I'm very very excited because first of all he's Italian and I very like Italian people, and I think that he's very very creative, and I saw a bit of his work, and yeah, we'll have some great topics to speak about. Mattia, pleasure having you here.
Thank you.
Very very happy. When I speak to to quantitative researchers and like the older ones, and when I immediately shift to the younger ones, I do see how do they absorb the experience and the expertise from the older quants onto their journey and onto their paths, which is for me it's like that learning curve, which is not very easy to go through, um, is very 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 impressive. Or if saying that in Italian, impressionante, I think.
That was very good.
Yeah, I told you that I love Italian people. And that's what we're going to speak about, at the beginning of our conversation. But before we start, I would love if you can present yourself, tell us more about yourself, guide us through, mate.
Yes. So thank you very much, first, Afek, for hosting. I've been
Thank you
also
for coming.
yes, I've been also a listener of the podcast. So
Thank you for
I
listening.
really yes, I really appreciate.
We're waiting for a while now to
Yeah,
have the
yeah, yeah,
recording
yeah.
session.
It's been a couple of tough months, and no, but really I appreciate also the kind of mission that you try to bring to a vast group of people what a quant is, because in the end I really feel like also, and please tell me if that was the meaning, but I feel like the name of the poster, the blushing quant, puts a little bit on the accent on the fact that as quants, very often I think we are seen as these very technical, very math, very coding guys that sometimes have a bit of even embarrassment, maybe to speak openly about what we do, and maybe also it's not that easy for other people in other fields and other professions to really understand what we're doing, because quite honestly, quite often it's very hard for us to explain it in plain, and also it's not that of a common thing. So I really think that what you're doing here really adds value
Thank you.
to the whole
Thank you.
conversation. Yeah. So this said, I'm Mattia. I've been working as a quant for now 2.5 years, so way more junior than a couple of people you interviewed up to now. I studied mathematical engineering in Milan at Politecnico di Milano. And then I moved to Quant Finance, which is still a master at Politecnico. And then I moved to Switzerland to start working as a quant.
Cross the
Originally,
bridge. You haven't really moved to Switzerland. You have crossed the bridge.
yes, yes, exactly. I took a 3 hours train and then I was in another country. I think it was one of the closest out of comfort zone movement that
So
it was ever.
you're still living in Milan, but
Yeah,
another
yeah,
parts of
kind of. I could
Milan.
commute. I could commute. Yes, definitely. And I, after, let's say, between my bachelor and my master, I also had a brief experience in Milan in an investment banking internship position. And then I decided to move more on a technical side. And yeah, as of now, I'm covering for derivatives. So all of those products on the financial markets that are derivating, as the name says, from one underlying. The underlying can be whatever, a stock, a bond, an FX, a commodity. The oil you put your car is an underlying in a certain sense. And yeah, but Afek, please, if maybe we want to go on with some specific questions. So
Yeah.
we can
So
start
first of all, you
mumbling
have
or.
yeah, yeah. Obviously, you're a man with a very with a very fascinating story about why we decided about the name of the blushing quants because the quantitative industry itself, like the mathematics and the way of thinking is very very hard to articulate. So we don't really need to even speak about the models and how to naming their decisions. So when a quant explains how it works you can see a certain blush over his face
Mhm.
or her face. And for me, it's fascinating to bring up some really really experienced quants onto the show and to to enable them to literally to blush. And yeah, that's the entire point of the podcast and to spread out their knowledge to the world, obviously which that's the point that I really want to touch onto the very first question, which I already touched upon, is the transaction in between generations, like between very experienced quantitative research onto the youngest generation of quantitative researchers in the largest firm and their impact and that their path of actually absorbing what is actually have been heavily researched in their very fresh and creative mind onto bringing some more innovation to the world, which is I think it's completely necessary. And I would like to ask you about the path. Obviously, you have learned so much. You have learned machine learning in depth. You have learned deep learning in depth. You have learned futures, forex, bonds, stocks, whatever, but with the junk of experience behind it, underneath it, or how do you like to propose the term? And I would like to ask you, how do you see the innovation in the world actually happening? Like, not speaking about the infrastructure and about age of the algorithms but the actual innovation, like the actual creative minds who come and innovate, which is a thing that we really didn't really had the chance to discuss about in the podcast.
Yeah. So as in every single, I think, time period since the beginning of history, times change fast. And what I can see, for example, as of now, AI has become a buzzword, as we know. Everybody's talking about it. Machine learning, deep learning, a lot of things just fall fast behind, not because they're not relevant, but just because the market moves very fast towards what is the new trend and the new branding of what the cutting edge technology is right now. And it's very important, I guess, to understanding the basics of a topic and trying to get deep into an argumentation, a discussion, try to really understand what's going on underneath. Why am I saying that? I'm saying that because I think that in these very volatile times, we can see it on the markets, but we can also see it how our job is changing. This AI revolution, if we want. Everybody now has a chatbot. Everybody is developing their own AI agent that does something very useful, etc. In all of this environment, I feel very often people maybe being afraid of losing their job or they're just mentioning about the insecurities about their future. And while for sure there are some jobs that will be for sure impacted, as a quant, I think that we are on the sweet spot, meaning that our job will drastically change, but a person behind the AI handling it, at least at this stage, it's still key. And I see an AI agent or something going in that direction as a tool that can empower us doing better, but still as something that will just unlock new areas of business, new ways of working, and new frontiers of what we can study. Maybe as of now, we know about vibe coding, and we know that now knowing how to program in Python, for example, is becoming less and less relevant, especially probably at the junior level. because now you can vibe code something very quickly, but you also need to have the tools to understand what the code has been generating. And furthermore, you also are able, in this case, in developing your ideas and your models faster. You can try new things, you can try more things. And this, to my eyes, is just pure empowerment.
Look. First of all, it is not a promotion, but I'm allowed to say that I work like very consistently with Gemini because Google just recently published some few videos and a few articles about how did they accelerate different researchers across different industries about having more and more mathematically rigorous and mathematically correct equations. So the correction entirely comes from from the from the AI, and that mathematical correction really accelerates new researches and new discoveries. And that way of interception inside of the conversation makes makes everything much more on steroids. And I think that we spoke previously before we started about the recording session. I don't know when that podcast is supposed to be uploaded, but we spoke about Rafael Giatz, and Rafael and I, we sat here for an hour and we spoke about that human in the loop. How do we leverage that capabilities over quantitative research, and how we can leverage those capabilities in order to understand in depth how to create the Redis code. Like I can share, I can share because it's nothing that's supposed to be never disclosed. But I work very intensively with Gemini in order to understand how can I leverage more of NumPy in my code in order to accelerate my calculation to receive first, very rapid results, and conversely, very accurate mathematically, results, so I can leverage. So that human in the loop is very critical to understand. And I would like to ask you, how do you see yourself,
Mhm.
after that period after a wide path of learning curve, and absorbing the knowledge from all their quants, and that acceleration. How do you see yourself, and how do you see your intervenience in the with those models actually working in practice?
Yeah. So I would say that in general, there is a strong focus as of now, on creating tools that are useful and are impactful. Now, in the areas I would say of publicly available LLMs and chatbots and these kind of products, I think I try to stay quite informed on the topic, but I'm not aware as of now of an AI that is understanding deeply math equations, stochastic equations, and can develop that kind of, um, let's say, knowledge to be able to, for example, start proofing something themselves. Or,
Hmm.
for example, doing a martingale measure change by themselves. So
Hmm.
I'm sure that we will get there, 100%. There is no way we're not getting there. But at the same time, I still see the human in the loop in this context as the one having the knowledge, at least, on how to think when posed in front of a mathematical problem. Now, the knowledge itself, if I go online and I look at, I don't know, rough volatility models, stochastic models, and stuff like this, the AI can probably explain to me everything, and it can explain me the proof of it, and it can do everything in their power to make me understand. And I think that on that case, AI is giving us, and LLMs in particular, are giving us a real democratization of knowledge.
Hmm.
Now you don't need to, if you want, and we all know, like, finance books are expensive with respect to the ordinary more vanilla topic books. Having a book about stochastic calculus, it's not something that anyone can raise their hand and buy. Sometimes they go for 70 euros a book. And the only idea that now you can ask ChatGPT or another or Claude or whoever you want to explain to you in very simple terms what a stochastic model is, that's
And how to
very, very
leverage it properly in your use case.
yeah.
If there is a thing that I really like doing with those large language models, and again, I will go back to Gemini, is I very like to manipulate the model, which I really like to force the model to think under the hat of, I don't know, a very experienced and very experienced quant. So I really ask him, okay, um, what do you think about that equation, or what do you think about that code? And if speaking about equations, and I don't really know the proper utility function or the proper delta, or I really want to test the algorithm, I write the code and then I test the code and then I see the plots, and if the and then I have like a much more concrete proof
Mhm.
to say, okay, now I know that my algorithm, or the algorithm I was creating right now, is much more correct. Like the rigor research really proves my standard point. And I think that the entire path of building, trading models, but you would have to think of, each and every single thing you would have to manipulate. You would have to press more and more and more pressure over those models. You would have to enable them to explore more, because as long as they explore, they narrow their exposure to a very experienced manner of things, and then you have the abundance of actually experience what do they have to offer to you.
Yeah.
Very
And
proper, very proper.
and and I think here you touched on a very interesting point, the fact that you need to really look in the details and review, for example, what the LLM is producing. And here I think also there will be soon a switch in maybe in some environments it's already there, but a switch in how we see something right or wrong. And what I mean is the following. As of now, of course, we all agree that if we want to produce something in our personal life or in the office using AI, we should deeply review what the AI is doing, no?
Mhm.
Now, let's imagine, of course, you can have an AI agent that does this review instead of yourself, etc., etc. So let's imagine for 1 second that you only have the human factor on that side.
Mhm.
Now the human factor is the bottleneck because I don't know, Claude can write a whole library in seconds, but then if you need a human in the loop that checks that the code that effectively you're pushing to the repo, if you need him or her to double check it, then that's the bottleneck. And now the question would be, how can I measure the risk of something bad being sent into a production environment? And at the same time, how can I estimate the risk of not growing fast enough, not developing tools fast enough, such that I lose a share of the market? Because, for example, I can have the most powerful model doing the most incredible thing ever, perfected to a state of the art because everything the AI produces is perfectly reviewed. But then maybe you're investing 1 month in creating one product while your competitor is developing 10 of them. And maybe while developing 10 of them, he gets or she gets a whole chunk of the market. And then, yes, maybe their model is less performative. Maybe there are mistakes, but still they have a size that can justify that amount of issues.
No, obviously, but it is still tricky. In Hebrew there is a famous phrase, very famous famous code that says, like, if you'll try to catch everything, you'll eventually find yourself with catching nothing. Now, obviously, as long as you have the most accurate model, um, you can leverage its capabilities onto doing some tremendously impressive things. But still, I think that that measurement of the human in the loop and how the human envelope is being creative and enabling, and enabling wide usage of the capabilities of the model. Now it's another surface to the game where how do we leverage the technology makes everything much more curious in a way that you can actually leverage your knowledge by the end of the day to accelerate these capabilities. Now, I would like to ask you, because you come from a very well-known corporate, um, how frequently do you use those AI models in your day-to-day job? How do you see your colleagues, talk to those AI models? How do you see it in the development processes? Obviously, disclose what you can do. What can you speak about? But just
Yeah.
give us a hint of what actually happening
So,
inside of the
well,
corporates.
yeah. So what I'm going to say, I think that applies to vast majorities of large corporates as of now, because of course, in the sector we talk, and there is a good environment for sharing information about this kind of new frontiers of AI and what we are building. So in general, I feel like prompting and the usage of AI has become our daily bread and butter. Because in general, as of now, it does. I don't think there is anymore the concept. Also in other areas in which we say, okay, this code can be definitely be written by Claude or by another AI agent. That kind of support, especially for vibe coding, is for sure something that now it's a it's a business standard. And the effort that we're making and many corporates I think are going for is about how to leverage this in a way that is not only making us work faster but also better.
Hmm.
Now, and I really feel that this can be easily perceived by anyone, even someone not in corporate, because as mentioned, nowadays, what we have on our laptops is extremely powerful, even as private citizens without any large corporate on our back. We all have access to Claude, we all have access to ChatGPT, Copilot, and multiple of them. So I think they can really relate. As of now, in my personal life, for example, I don't use Google anymore. I just look up stuff in ChatGPT.
Hmm.
And if I had to, let's say, summarize this concept in one sentence, I would say that it's just become very familiar now. It's something that entered our lives a couple of years ago, at least to the less academic of us, because AI is there since ages. Uh, but such a democratization is very, very recent, and as of now has an incredible weight. There is a lot of review. Of course, there is the willingness to always double check, because as we know, LLMs can hallucinate, and sometimes the prompt is extremely important in trying to get what you actually want. But also sometimes on other tasks, it's also nice to leave the prompt a bit vague and see what the AI does. Because sometimes if you, for example, have a specific idea on how you want to build a code base and you start defining everything, then the AI is also less free of showing you what is the best way of doing that.
Hmm.
And
You
sometimes
know,
it's just nice to say, okay, I want to develop this thing, do it as a state of the art software engineer and just show me how you do it. Because maybe you think of a data structure that is completely different in object oriented programming than the one I was thinking of.
mhm. It's very, get increasingly interested about speaking. How do you create quantitative models nowadays with the usage of AI? How do you structure the research notebook? How do you structure your IDE? How do you leverage AI? In the bridge between development to deployment. Let's speak about actual applications.
Mhm.
So let's start with research. how do you bring on with how do you come up with new ideas? How do you test multiple ideas? How do you leverage stochastic procedures onto testing your research, in a very in depth onto until touching the metals. And how do you leverage the capabilities of ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or whatever large language model that you have out there in order to accelerate that research process?
Yeah. So first of all, I think that the key topic here is also to try to understand and to know when you prompt a large language model, it's very important to know what they have access to. And the reason why I say that is that a very common thing that can happen is the AI very often bases the responses to what is available to them. And sometimes it can happen that if for a tool something is unavailable, some stuff is just made up. So regarding research, I think that the key there is still a very high focus on data quality, data that it's not only vast and complete, but it's also easily accessible. And there, I think that AI will bring a drastic change, both in how we look at data, how we store them, and how also we will decide to allow them to be summarized by the AI. Now, in general, in research, also maybe a question for you, Afek. What do you mean in general with research? Do you mean market research, or do you mean more related to which kind of tools we can create and let's say
No, I
use to
refer
enhance
I
our job from a software engineering perspective?
Yeah, sure. So I was referring to quantitative research, to
Okay.
pure quantitative research, like to,
Yeah.
from the
No. Yeah.
ideation till, having a concrete understanding
Yeah.
of the model.
For sure, then one thing I would mention is that how now we represent data, it's something that changed quite in a significant way, meaning that now with AI, we are able to summarize a vast amount of inputs into easily digestible dashboards and representations. And this is, I would say, the biggest contribution to this is that it's speeding up our job.
Mhm.
As of now, again, I don't see an incredible thinking, if you want to call it that way, but logical reasoning deduction from the data. Sometimes some interesting aspects are spotted, but some other times it's just a summary of it. For sure, it's important nowadays it's even more important than before to ensure the data qualities and to ensure that the data that is actually being fed to the model, to the large language models themselves, is of premium quality. And then the second point that I think it's bringing a drastic impact on, it's about testing. And in generally, for example, developing testing for a code base or developing testing for a theory you have in mind that you want to prove, about back testing, about all of this kind of analysis, which I would say very soon they become non-standard because I mean, when stuff becomes very, very complex, it's not as straightforward to say, okay, the back testing is this super vanilla thing that we always saw, and that's going to be the same for every single model we have. Sometimes we need, of course, to tweak something, but it's giving an incredible boost in enhancing your time and unlocking your time such that you can focus on more meaningful stuff.
Mhm. And I have interviewed here some very well-defined quants that manage approximately few thousand few millions to 100 millions, and they told me that their bottleneck is deployment. Now, deploying the models properly sounds very complex mission, which, to upload a PD model and upload the model itself and ensure the code is ready for production environment and everything. So I would like to ask you, how do you leverage those capabilities in order to understand and to extrapolate from your code base what is actually a necessity to understand and to extract and to fix or to do whatever it needs in order to go for deployment very, very
Yeah.
carefully.
Yeah. I think that this also relates to how much bureaucracy there is in a certain sector. And what I mean is, if, for example, I was in my apartment and I wanted to build algo trading model for myself, or even at the state of the art, I'm not talking here about how sophisticated the model is. It can be very sophisticated, but if I can deploy it just based on how I feel about it and if I'm confident about the code, then that's super quick. But as we know, there are institutions that are regulated. And I guess that this topic that you mentioned raises not really for maybe the most um, let's say, aggressive players on the market, but also for large corporates, which cannot afford the risk of deploying something that is not state of the art, or in any case, that is not extremely reliable. So for sure, there, the human in the loop is still a topic. And
Mhm.
I don't see in the short term future an AI agent that is able to review this thing and can deliver it with 100% accuracy, that the code is sound and it's fine, etc. Also, because if you ask 10 quants to develop the same thing, they will develop it in 10 different ways because they have their own idea on how the volatility should be calibrated, on how certain parameters should be tweaked. And I don't think that the AI basing itself on what it's found online or what you feed it, I don't think it's going to do any better. Um, Now the interesting aspect it's that, and maybe you can also mention to me a concrete example if this person mentioned it, but I guess that this human in the loop at this stage it's still a bottleneck, and I think it relates to what I mentioned before, that probably in the future, I see it as changing the criteria in which we assess risk.
Mhm.
Maybe in the future, it will be because the point is this: if, for example, let's say that a company has an issue in assessing a certain kind of risk and they need to deploy a fix to it. And they're not sure that the code is sound, and so they need to check it. And to check it, they take 1 month. The question is, how do you compare the risk of waiting 1 month to fix the problem because you want the code to be perfect, with respect to the risk of deploying something immediately, such that we immediately account for the risk, with a code that basically maybe it's, I don't know, 99% sound.
Mhm.
That's not an easy thing to assess, and I think that's where we should look at when we talk about deployment and when we talk about testing.
Yeah. Um, okay, and you're still, revisiting revisiting that issue that you constantly repeating about is the bottleneck. I would like to understand from you how can you actually avoid how you can actually avoid those situations, but in a very wiser solutions because the code still needs to be heavily due diligence. Now,
Yeah.
obviously, you can never expect the code to be perfect, but you can force, as we have spoken previously, the language models to rewrite the code in a much better format. But it's still how do you can actually remove the redundancy of that bottleneck of the human in the loop and leverage the capabilities of the AI and
Mhm.
still be able to enjoy the agile capability you're actually getting, and the wide variety of things that the AI
Mhm.
can provide you with.
Yeah. So I think that's the million-dollar question, no? Meaning that not.
I have never priced the question. I'm not a AI market maker.
Um, yeah, so the short answer, I don't know. Probably, let's say the low-hanging fruit that I see, it's to create deeper series of monitoring tools.
Mhm.
That maybe the point is not really now to, and again, here it's just speculation. Like I don't know what we'll be doing in the future, but what I'm trying to saying is that if the bottleneck is me being able to assess if something is 100% sound, maybe I could just decide that as of now, I'm not interested in that, but I should put a lot of checks and constraint and KMPIs and analysis on the tool working as analytics to monitor it. And as soon as I see an outlier or something that is off, then I can take action. I really don't think that the point here is ensuring that the code is going to be 100% perfect. That's
Mhm.
never going to happen. You will have bugs.
You know,
But what? Wait. Sorry.
yeah, please, please,
Just
please
because
continue.
what I think we can improve a lot is our ability to react to a bug. Meaning, how fast can we spot it, and how fast can we fix it?
You know, Cursor just released a feature that enables like Cursor to develop your features in a production environment in the VM itself. And
Mm,
you know, the capabilities of you know leveraging AI and you know different locations like in the development process and inside the deployment process, it is, you know, ongoingly increasing and exponentially increasement of all the innovation in that space. And you know, I do know a CEO here in Israel who manages, I think, 400 people, and they have trained the model to test their code, and the model has been trained about like you know with multiple amount of data that is heavily related to the code that they have that they are proprietary that they that they own proprietary, you know, with their proprietary signature. And for me, it's fascinating the ability even to train those models, to train those, you know, very, very complex models with your data, and to have those models like now we speak about like agentic systems and so on. You can actually build a very, 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 very strict due diligence agentic system to
yeah.
test that code for you. And by the end of the day, they have a dashboard and they see, oh, okay, now I understand the code. Now I see how it works. Now I see I don't know, its outputs. Now I see in a very concrete manner how it works and how the function works, and everything with a dashboard. So it's much more clear. And for
Mhm.
me, when I was listening to him saying that, I instantly got you know got a blushing moment,
Yeah.
which you know it is a thing that everybody can do nowadays.
Yes, 100%. Um, my take on it would be that still, if you create a very specific agent and you train and you restrict the domain, let's say, of the LLM, because you take an LLM and you retrain it and you fit it on your set of data and you make it super specific, then you can create an army of agents. But my point is that in any case, you are not getting rid of the hallucination topic. Yes, I can have 10 agents reviewing, double checking, and applying all the systems I want, but there will always be that risk. Now, we will arrive probably at some point in which we will say this risk is way lower than the one of a human. Probably we are already there in certain aspects of it. Or when we will arrive at a point in which, okay, this probability is so small it's negligible.
Hmm.
But still, on that, you will always have some uncertainty, as usual, and as it is nowadays, about the output and the outcome of what you're building. And I think that we can all agree that on certain topics, on the topics that the LLM is it's trained for and the agent is trained for, I think we can all agree that a junior software engineer developing something, probably it's putting more bugs in the code than Anthropic top tier AI agentic software engineer. On this, I think that as of now, we can agree. Now, I think that the point is switching more for our job, more on an architecture point of view. We can stop focusing on how to write the right function, on how to allocate memory in the more efficient way, but we can think about how we build, deploy, and use our applications in a more sustainable way. And for example, Claude released an Outlook report for what they envision as 2026 innovations in the AI world. No? And now we're talking about agentic AI and we're talking about single agents doing something, but then soon we will have agents that actually they're already there. But what they were mentioning are these agents that actually manage other agents, and you create teams like pods in the agile infrastructure.
Mhm.
And these teams have a scope and they independently work 24/7 or let's say, of course, that will be capped by the amount of servers available at that point. But the point is, they will be independent teams.
Mhm.
And at
You
the
know,
same time, you will have, let's say, redistribution, of course, of this knowledge across people that maybe are not software engineers. They don't know how to code. They don't know Python. They don't know R. They don't know C++ or whatever. But still, that they're able to interact with an agent and develop something.
very interesting. You know, very, very interesting. I think that like the capabilities of nowadays technology, you know, we were having that conversation and, you know, very rapidly within 3 to 6 months, I think that conversation will be entirely irrelevant because
Outdated. Yeah.
I was coming back home from the gym and I was listening to Elon Musk says his vision about like you know uh, taking like tremendous amount of gigawatts and GPUs to space and how efficient the computation and the entire procedures will actually become to be. Um, with the acceleration of compute in space, which I think it's a fascinating point to touch upon. And for me, I really really like it. Um, and I really like the direction that it goes. But right now, I would like to shift gears onto a different topic, which is the business case. For you and for every quant, I constantly hear that you know. Um, the business case is heavily important to have a proper due diligence, like in the intersection between the model and to the business case of why do we build the model. And I always speak about like you know the ideation of the model itself, but we don't really but we completely ignore the business case and how do we leverage the business case to the model and how do we correlate in between them. And I would like to brainstorm together with you about how do you structure a business case for a model that you would like to deploy.
Mhm. Maybe first, just to agree on terminology, what do you mean really with the business case? Do you mean, let's say, a business event? Like, for example, there is a client that has a problem, or do you mean more related to something with the financials of the company?
So it could be both. It can be both. It is still both aligned to the business case. So
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I see. So I think that here the key is about defining very, very well at the beginning of your exercise what's the issue that you want to fix. What's the problem? What's the bottleneck that it's stopping us from achieving something more? And especially, what's the outcome that we want to get? And this, I guess, this is quite independent of AI, LLMs, or whatever. It's just critical thinking, looking at something and really focusing on, okay, which kind of solution I can create for this. I feel like more and more with time, quants are becoming that bridge between the business side of things, what a trader needs as a support, but also what the hedge fund manager needs for investment strategy, etc. But also the other side, which is the software engineering part of the job. Because we
Hmm.
have that thing, no? We are looking on one side on markets. We are looking at volatility. We are looking at how precious metals reacts to politicians' statements, etc. And on the other side, we need to translate this in numbers, get it into a machine, and then execute something that needs to be relatively efficient in order for us to provide answers.
Hmm.
And I feel like when we talk about quants very often, it passes this concept to the vast majority of people that we know a little bit of math and we know a little bit of coding and statistics and machine learning and these kind of things. But the really key here, especially in a certain kind of business, is being able to provide an answer in reasonably fast times, short
Hmm.
times. And this idea, in the end, we all know, like there is nothing as the perfect model. Every model needs to be constantly back-tested, recalibrated, analyzed. We need to understand if the correct business cycle is picked, if the new market environments are not fit anymore to the model that we created before. That is a constant improvement and a constant adaptation of what we're building around the reality. But then, especially in certain environments, then really there it depends. Because, for example, if you're doing high frequency trading on, I don't know, futures, then you need to be very specific about bid ask and what you're doing. Maybe in other areas of financial institutions, you can be a little bit more relaxed and maybe approximating it to the old dollar at that point doesn't matter anymore. But what is important, I think, in this context and to provide a concrete answer to business is what is it that you want to solve? How much accuracy do you need to solve it? And how fast can we deliver that product such that the client advisor, the sales representative, the trader can have something in front of their eyes in reasonable time such that they can face the market in a very competitive way, also with respect to the competition and other companies.
Hmm. Very interesting. Very interesting breakdown. Um, Another topic that I would like to brainstorm with you is your academic background.
Mm.
Nowadays, I hear a lot of noise about like different topics that's supposed to be, narrowly defined for quantitative research. But I know a bunch of quants that comes from an an economics background, which are, worthwhile, maybe more than, someone who comes from a STEM background. Now, I would like to ask you, out of your perspective, what do you think about your academic journey? What do you think about the quantitative industry, like from an academic perspective, and how
Mhm.
can you see that correlation works between the two?
Yeah. So, as I mentioned before, I studied mathematical engineering and quantitative finance at Politecnico is a master program of the mathematical engineering branch. Now, of
Hmm.
course, in quant finance, and for example, I'm an example of a person that doesn't have a PhD. In the quant field, very often we find PhDs in physics, in math, also chemistry. Um, I think it really collects a vast set of people that are, of course, have a STEM background. That's something that, to be honest, I've heard of traders, for example, who studied philosophy. I never heard of a quant who studied philosophy, but I'm very happy if there are some. I think that a strong STEM background is quite important. Nothing, of course, that anyone cannot study by themselves. I mean, we are limitless. We can do whatever we want, but I never heard of it. What I really felt between my bachelor degree and my master's degree was that I really wanted to have a touch with the business and with the financial sector. And that's why I went to investment banking. Now, that was a 3 months internship, and it was not really on quant topics, but it was more on investment banking, M&A, and capital markets. So um, basically providing advisory or helping clients achieve their goals, which could have been an IPO, a merge, whatever it was. I
Mhm.
feel like in that context, my mathematical engineering background provided a good input because very often that kind of role are fulfilled by finance students and finance professionals. So, for example, people who studied at Bocconi in Italy, Milan. But I think that my quantitative take on how, for example, our regression had to be made or how we could enhance what we were doing and our Excel and modeling performance with coding, that for sure added some value.
Mhm.
Then, of course, I really understood that it was for sure something interesting to do, but that what I really wanted to do was something more related with math and more heavy on coding. Especially, I really want to get deep into C++, and see something a little bit more than just Python. And at the time, we were using VBA, which is like the coding language of Microsoft. I mean, we were using it underneath PowerPoint and Excel. Um, the key aspect I would say that my background gave me to become a quant is the way I'm thinking, which is not strictly related about looking at the numbers because numbers are just a manifestation of something that is underneath. But this idea of being able as an engineer to take a problem and break it down into small chunks.
Mhm. No, I think like the engineering perspective or the engineering, chain of thought really enhance like the capabilities of looking at problems differently.
Mm,
And that overview of problems in a very different manner enables an in-depth thinking of the problem that you're aiming to solve. And that's the most accurate thing nowadays, in my mind, in relation to, to the intersection between, the academic background to the implications in the industry.
mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, so before we go, there is a thing that I really like to ask, every guest that I'm having is we spoke about the innovation of the markets and about emerging markets get more established. And I really like to explore with you your point of view about how or where the markets or the emerging markets will go. How fast is the adoption of, crop rates over this area of markets, and how do you see like the entire evolution of emerging markets get close and get more efficient in the next year?
Mhm. Mhm. First, maybe again, just to understand, we're talking about the same thing. With emerging markets, are you referring to, for example, the Asian countries, or are you referring more on, for
Could be
example, this
anything.
new AI wave and tech companies, etc.?
Could be anything. Literally anything.
Okay, I see, I see, I see. Okay, so again, $1 million question. For sure,
Look,
I,
but
yeah.
fortunately, if you had the answer for those questions, you will become a millionaire like instantly.
Ah, yeah,
So
that's for sure. But maybe that's your strategy, Afik. You're just trying to find to find the answer from someone else, and then you can.
that's my edge.
Yeah.
That's my edge. You
Actually,
got me.
actually,
You
so
got
that's
me.
the point of this. It's not about quants. It's just
It's not
about, okay,
about
listen, I
it's
need
not
to
about
find
you
a solution
blushing
to this.
blushing
I just ask
beautifully in front of the
10,000
camera. No, it's
people.
about understanding the edge. Obviously, that's what I'm trying to say here. I'm trying
Good.
to
Yeah.
extract the information out of you guys. No, I'm just
Yeah.
kidding.
Yeah. Yeah. No, so maybe what I would it would be meaningful for me to opine about is more related probably on how corporates will adapt to this AI wave and how our job will change. Um, for sure, and I guess that at any point in time, many people could have said this is a key moment in our industry. This is a key moment in for our future, etc. I feel like this right now. We're at a point in which very soon many people, even the ones that are less technical, will be able to develop and create AI agents for their day-to-day tasks. And here it's fascinating how probably not everything will stick, as many things. Some people, of course, some people say that the AI is a bubble. We know about different transactions. I don't want to get into the details now, but between NVIDIA, ChatGPT, there are news of deals coming in every day. It's not clear what will stay and what will go away because it's just hype at the moment. But it's for sure something that we all can agree on. We will never go back to a point in which we won't have a small AI chat that solves very simple problems for us. Maybe it's
Mhm.
not going to evolve as we expect. Maybe it's not going to go as fast as we wish. And maybe at some point we will just realize it's super expensive to run because we have limited resources. But for sure, this way of working is one of the biggest change I would say in the last decades, and the way we are working in 30 years will be way more different than the difference between how we're working now and 30 years ago, I think.
Mhm. Brilliant. Okay, so to wrap it up, I would say that I have enjoyed that conversation. It was very friendly, very predictive conversation, I
Hmm.
might say. And I enjoy those types of conversation. Now, obviously, we haven't really dived deep into the bread and butter quantitative research and modeling and everything, but still, I think that the acceleration of artificial intelligence all across will enable us to dive deep, like independently, but we still need to use how we still need to know comprehensively how to control it. Otherwise, we'll lose efforts and obviously not to be a bottleneck. So I think it's a great closure. And again, Mattia, I really want to thank you for your participation and for your time. I was waiting for that conversation for a while now, and I'm very happy for the opportunity. And yeah, thank you. I very appreciate it.
Thank you, Afik. Again, thank you very much for hosting, for inviting me, and
Pleasure was mine.
for asking meaningful questions. And thanks again for what you're doing because I think it's extremely viable. It's interesting, and I hope that many people can listen and let's say get inspired by what we do. As of now, the number of quants I think they're growing because with respect to some years ago, it's a little bit more common of a term, but still we are still talking about a very small fraction of the market. And in the future coming, when really technical skills are going to become key because a lot of information will just going to be scattered around on large language models. I think that's a career and that's a path that are extremely interesting and extremely challenging for ambitious individuals.
That's right. And hopefully, we'll be able to grow the community and we'll be able to expose more people onto different ideas. And when I say people, I'm not just saying like, ordinary people, but I'm speaking about like really experienced quants that can actually, transfer ideas through the podcast and through listening to other colleagues in the industry, which for me it's a great pleasure. And yeah, so guys, thank you very much for listening. Until next time, I would like to say again, thank you for you, Mattia, and yeah, see you next time. See you on the next episode.